I'm back and 40-ish dollars richer, or rather, 40-ish dollars to use for subsistence and existence and survival. Raking it in. Um, Here we go. I made this while early in my run, so let's try it out.
The random faith generator, where we press this button which produces a random faith, active or extinct, always real or eternally fictional, grandiose or petty as fuck. And once the faith is randomly determined, we will listen to the homily of the week from the pastoral agent of that particular faith, and we will employ discernment on its message to extract what relevance and value it has for our lives. Now, quick. I have to finish the term paper on corporate misinformation during times of war. Just press the button. You press the button! Which flickers and F-whipples and gathunk on the screen is the random faith of the week. The Zagat's Guide to Faith, a way of living unto itself. It is one of those old-timey guides whose best description is the Trivial Pursuit Guide to every form of atheism you never knew you liked, one of those that begins with a sure and ironclad rejection of belief. Zagat explains the zeitgeist and its revelations, then tracks and validates its theory, and disproves that the last event in this theory can't possibly have happened. There once was an English woman of repugnant youth. She liked to boast and lie a great deal. Her parents, who were greatly inclined towards chastity, taught her much about how to get out of her duties, but when it came to lying, they let her get away with the kind of lie that the New Testament, among others, takes its most famous pilloried for. The idea of her father saying he went fishing in Galilee, the patron of fishermen, but none of her father's fishing nets being in Galilee that night, not in the sea nor the sand, nor up in a tree in that order. It is commonly referred to as catching some serious fish. This was so she could visit a fawning but unmoving artist's studio and bang the 28-year-old fat but highly talented businessman she liked in there. And all for the love of a night of young promiscuity. Not of their common fate, though. Her fate did eventually become quite public when a photo of her bawled into tears between her wails of bliss began its course into the world on the early evening news.
Modern.
She lies like you lie. The whole business seems like something so dear to me that I can't really focus on all the talk of her boasting in her lying because sure, yeah, it sounds great and good-humored. And it does say it's a late 80s satirical novel. And then we jump in mid-chapter because my brother liked it once. You know how if your little brother grows up to like a book and you like the book, you both do? This was different. Here is another nudge at this American heroine, with the observation that here is a young person who once dared to see the world with no friend and no special achievement. She does not know if her achievements have the strength to travel onwards to her inevitable middle age run. Artless, expensive, but frenzied meeting with someone young and secure, having the financial status for these journeys that would send any of your kind back into the fields, perhaps the windowed gardens of their choice for this enterprise. Emily, here to Zagat, that ludicrous teen whore like yourself gets a dig what. Now she is to be blamed for going home. The speaker wonders about her late parents, Jesus. Can imagine where I get that idea about honesty in the words as I read. Put my flesh under so much inquiry and distraction that it is my wife who taps me and asks where I've gotten to. Yeah, I guess the issue here is whether she, like me, is living a faithless life or a holy one. The sheer moxie of the text is the visit to every gathering where people are gathered in the name of an abstraction or a comfort, and the detailed review for each. It was very complicated to write and also to live. What a subjectivity that would be, and I myself will soon begin one more version of just such an article. It's gonna be an op-ed this time, and say on the tendency to overreach one's understanding in our diffident and rude embarrassment. Then again, but at last, I myself think this story should end up by proving something. The certainty that things can only ever end in embarrassment. There must be an undeniable element of truth or doubt to it for whatever reason it has made it here for so long. Why now? Perhaps we could still believe in any particular thing, but are the lies we believe still intact? The artist might never return. Her fate did eventually become quite public. Who had proof that that wasn't always the case? The core of a joke is to wonder at our ability to swallow it whole. That I spend most of my days digesting jokes doesn't change the fact that a good joke has never existed. Just like everything that exists. What we mean is how little I am to endure. There is no structure but it. There is no basis in matter and nature that will exist or continue existing unless it's changed. I thought the essence of what exists is that it stays put in what it is and nothing happens to it. Unless it's killed? But does that mean it can never exist again? Leaving a random human body dead and return to Earth doesn't just sit in the ground quietly and get inhabited by all these little things in the body and the bacteria that consume it for shit. Sometimes after I have fucked, I sit in bed thinking of where our sex and body just got thrown back out into the air and carried back here to fuck again. Our very nature, of course, to eat our way down from that upper layer of fucking on up until it reaches some dead thing below us who gave it permission to try again, and I eat their shit and become them again, then get returned to that point. To those higher principles and stories from my body of movement. Some other cells, however, could carry the tale onward. From time to time, some stranger could point a lens at my penis. After its deposit, it remains incurious. My erection would come at this gesture, at the tracing of an already established detail of its meaning. Nothing then moves. There's nothing at the scene that has even shifted. Instead of understanding my entire being at once as the culprit or as the crime scene, it only brings out something more ready, and in this case of nature only operating as evidence of an alteration that already has its origin just outside the realm of knowing it for itself. All the tricks I play and tell myself now work on the part of what they always aim at. It'd be more like it is and less like itself, like me. And this so can happen all here, right there in front of us. It cannot work without us here. For a change to occur in any one instance in the thing itself just being itself. This change never exists in the thing itself, though it certainly exists in the matter surrounding it. I'm being metaphorical. I'm actually meaning emotional baggage. You can't piss or shit from the feelings and thoughts you are having about sex or money. That's your relationship with the element. There's a woman, that woman you want. Who is there? Where's her mouth? Has she finished swallowing? Think of my ponderous.
No, something. Let's not dwell too much on your
I
phallus.
I'm being metaphorical. I'm actually meaning emotional baggage. Shit is such a killer word because it can have no further use in its language. Its point and business are no further than where we live with it, and I believe I understand and embody a state that makes one possible. Here you may hold an emotional barbecue if you want to do what I'm talking about. Let the symbolic hack lead into some bright dawn we feel we are moving towards. Call up someone who used to have that religion and call him out as a brother and hug it out in some emotional barbecue with the best intentions, just to prove there are good things and there's love at the start of all our scheming of wanting something here. We are sitting down and with that something, and why should that bring on death or separation? And now let's thumb randomly through the Book of Faith reviews and see how they assess and assemble their rubrics. An Abradu whom I talked to, in fact, quite surprised me. My childhood friend who finally wrote me back. Someone who writes of some odd fact on their family tree. That some other member was left out when everyone's genealogy was looked up for this anniversary. One person I passed in the hall when I was quite young and often pass since. My thoughts on which don't get recorded. Someone I didn't care about talking about myself about a cat who gave them some comfort years back. Their words now help me also. Maud just slipped through. Just that and the initial. All these conversations as old friends, suddenly discovering old paths, suddenly stumble through the day with its requirements to remember this thing or that brings something around again. This book being too big, so should it be closed with Maud as a close, huge lid, accomplished and cozy friend who has topped my ears off the last 15 years and helped me. How she got my ears to settle long ago. Maybe those I told them to knew her now and remembered that is she well enough, of course. That is in my head in there somewhere. This is Hamad. What to call them back as themselves now. Their old memory-eating husband. I understand their lives can go on happily like that neighbors whose friend remembers and knocks back as long and full of drink as the day. They aren't tired. Eat, too. All the best. These people we found here really have come from deep in here. What a rich man I've turned. This text is partly the daytime response to the Icelandic epic on the dreams of the people of Iceland in the 11th century or so. At this moment. So maybe its difficulty isn't its failure. We would read the same book anywhere in the world with any face, reading it without looking over. No time is so dark. Yet, as long as the ground held grass to feel our bodies, for the day remained at ease, is only here because our different state, not shared. In Iceland 2,500 years ago, people would walk about as they would if they thought their entire life depended on it. Bare feet and everything, doing whatever was most urgent to the body in front of them that demanded this weather, this horizon, this column of wind or time. No wonder people wrote of how at every moment they walked among mountains or places that once lived but no longer are. There was an abundance in them to write on because they walked forever into the earth, whose details there I just lifted from. Forever seeing it with surprise which made us give it names that recalled these ancient sightings and this change we endured. This eye seeing at the level as simple as what it sees is hard to think who else besides you might come upon my final memoir of anything or me. Who else I really wish to exist to us in these times, and before I leave the earth forever, that will have to suffice as who I really am. If you will. Anyway, hello. Though I wonder, won't this most vivid human impression only move around or out, or just lie here alone a second while there's me also looking in from there at it? To sum up, Bjork had some humongous kill-ups to fill. Not huge, though, so to speak. If I were her brother, they would have fit around him nicely. Two, you would be all set. Would it help to describe, even though in what follows we try not to? Our thighs can swallow you whole, everyone being the size of each other and so much taller than me. There's this animal.
No. You don't do that, Bjork.
To sum up, Bjork had some humongous kill-ups to fill. We discovered early on that our wife was much like her and felt certain comparisons between them must have some bearing on whether to grant any new preferences or hold out for her original preference. Here we are reading each other's story from her books and radio plays as much as our own stories from these things, all three of us writing back in, turning ourselves into better parts of Bjork we've always wanted to be. Then next month turn into something better of ourself, that the real thing can look over and agree was so cool and marvelous, can't help but suspect now what might come up then at a moment like this when the actual flesh can't go and eat anything to distract us from whatever's being discussed. If in 1 week from now some group arrives many, A lot of men, all of them talking about our wives. What comes out of it is that you don't know you'll die till you see some movement of life passing under all your speculation that the thing has happened. I feel on my inner throat the name Bjork when my mouth shuts on my chewing food now, as on all this shit all around me I would not expect. But anyway, myself on this massive hike where the side I came from had made the lower slant the sensible and better one to start it for reaching a long summit at a wide sea. The ridge gets steeper as you look further along it because this place you climb has its summit on one side only now here and nothing on this slanting terrain at its far. Ridge I see from an easy few strides forward, our original path pointing up into some scraggly brush at its spine. Even this offshoot track, which we kept making reference to, had fallen behind us already because our foot was forced up yet higher with no energy wasted for return. Soon all traces of our little family march together now looked only like this bit of fresh concrete laid for one purpose, of course, to trick a foolish world of believers into getting more lost and more hopeless each day. Every man's life equally tethered and inevitable to an instant end, then disappearing soon. When there was nothing else so like this bit of road, there we were at last all up. Nothing so hungry, tired, thirsty, just our rucksacks and shoes and belts and compasses and some friends. Maybe they don't exist. Maybe Bjork looks blankly at all this, her mind totally on our next album and nothing else. Our friend can't really be bothered by all the schemes and bustles that dominate most of this whole its major actors, but especially me, though it makes my daily life on the very least about just seeing where it may turn if I am different and lead things here for any reason at all. Of course, that means, in actual fact, my own self will only be following any twists or turns so closely only to prove, in case it be otherwise, that I haven't completely vanished like this whole future I'm contemplating with a firm belief it must be kept living without me. My problem with writing any sort of memoir producing as an art something about a moment is that no one would give a shit for any story it is supposed to hold anyway. In my opinion, a memoir only seems interesting, enthralling even, to others precisely because it is a fictional writing about your own life, fictional you meaning I am that author in the telling, whereas the one doing the actual telling isn't that writer. Either still this can only make sense because all real events must in actual fact already be happening far away and seldom here, while I read about them me, still doing whatever. Meanwhile, me of now or in the future sitting and taking the measure of those early or not, words, then holding them up in memory and hope so as to how they felt, knowing of course there won't be any point or justification to have that reading. I suppose only in my present reading myself reading another person's book. Of course, these must not be all about themselves alone at the time of their writing, but were intended to be read later, too. Later than themselves, even more, always also, as some futurist has it here and is finding it already there, waiting in spite our work when we might look for it one day after many, many years. Me now, though, this very hour, in fact, I have had an experience of exactly this also, just on hearing a writer's friend tell his story. Even more than knowing from some place that these things existed all in history. Now my brain somehow willed it would take all this work I just began and spend the day afterward analyzing every detail of it. Reviewing until it was like, what do I learn from it? Or why am I still working on this stuff if that is the effect it has on me while others look at this work and don't look at it at all? Reading such an important story written down now at once gives you some distance. Another place you could be reading it if you need the distance. Standing out there now, outside, you reading me, you mean I feel distant from this myself. Am I like Bjork? Okay, even so, this experience gives us what? Its meaning. I might pause to speak a moment, though. Say what I would then wish to talk about. So how often in one's life can a life force go towards someone to eat them till what may only look like they are ready to meet what that other part of that force has been running it so fiercely through any obstacle or clue on how to act with no assistance there. Our time is up. Next week, we tour the Church of Charles Entertainment Cheese. Our appearance now awaits only our descent at last from the stucco castle walls upon this grassy plain. Still, how about a bed in a quiet farmhouse as we fly back home and collapse? Is that what this moment calls for? Some comedy. Even I will no longer find anything amusing soon. All in a few pages back there. Or does any writing reach its conclusion too early? Must they keep going now to preserve a chance at immortality, or so people tell us? Even this epic effort that cost me nothing except sleep now, they wanted preserved by going on without end. How was my name gotten so dirty? Where was my silliness still located in such an ancestral household? Stare! Being up to so many miles now, it can be very hard to orient and hence to wander at foot on any long trek, stiffly moving, each foot in a cramping path that makes over each individual rock in its track until up to our middle and lower thighs begin to know these as our bones of legs, one set on top of another inside. As much as anything, it was to resist letting your muscles grow tired. What? Lazy, but for those feet who spend the long trek day after day up in a pattern of footsteps. A year to reach such a condition in those feet is unheard of, or so I read about that moment not very long ago, and later decided it must not have happened here where the current lies. Like Bjork, whose head didn't crack under the burden, he too finds his feet firm on the ground before him to not really sink down from any disaster. Bjork at home is someone with some virtue, yet unbroke by any failure we can fathom at home here. Someone, most recently, who spent 6 months up in Greenland recording new songs while the world made sure he spent that time holed up at a Danish flat being driven in a limo all over Copenhagen doing shopping or television bouquet. A brief excerpt now. While being driven about to play at festivals on my Arctic tour, Bjork once got irritated at a policeman who parked behind them on the road while she waited on a street corner. He revved up his vehicle loudly to keep Bjork's driver company on the road. She of so gross an origin, so thrown, finally having the life of a St. Cutchord at 39, struck by a passing traffic accident in New York when her motorbike skidded and jumped its right front tire as if its opposite had no idea to block Bjork from moving again into its great accident. She chose at that exact moment, feeling nothing or everywhere in herself. I began to doubt myself. At that instant, being dragged destination unclear around another vehicle, crushed to her dying gasps like this hollering no sound could possibly explain the gasp nonetheless. But falling as a Christian, the obdurate sinner, through all this she shouts and flaps her limbs as one leg lifted off the floor out to her jaw, but both elbows still swinging from some cordon traffic squat. We went to the Stonewall Bar and Grill to mourn with our comrades. Bjork's lover of the night is always busy keeping on schedule as if each rendezvous, to is scheduled in some invisible barometers and records at this juncture. So too does some machine check each hour on whether this party will reach the finale before time runs out more out of itself for good. Also on if it can last through to another rendezvous, which is a visit or a trip into any city in the country not organized by Bjork. Today she makes appointments with various senators in a batch each hour of each day. Visits, public meetings, sit-in stops into meetings, questions asked, sits at rallies, teleconferences, filing paperwork. While not usually acting or expressing his art, performing in fact in one form or another demonstrations, recordings, staged performances, revivals. Each of these takes a place within what I should describe as Bjork's old preoccupation, a plague. A series of simultaneous plagues to take out any people and governments with too many citizens as leaders. Me. But sure, there's only one right way to think of an infection and only one way of defining disease itself, especially any illness or plague or flu bug. Consider also malaria or pneumonia, if indeed these two processes really could be likened to anything so at all. These two still no plagues. That word alone may carry all its meaning exactly backwards. Can it just mean some failed system? Is it even possible to get behind or deep within this infection with more than all of one's knows? On its surface, such an infectious surface, always feeling all that disgust. But where else is there to go? You do have to work pretty hard on your attitude about the plague business in order to avoid total silence at any scene or room when any Bjork me at her door shouts and storms for attention and privilege, yelling loudly and pushing through anyone who makes himself that hard or simply that poor and unable to go there into a world without such privileged influence people everywhere in it and outnumbering any people anywhere. You look so they get treated and lived over all day as a law by law all through our everyday life here that can only be voted in or taken down if ever that horrible privilege gets up into the field or porch. We all feel more comfortable sitting under Bjork in one room at once, many rooms around me. An obeying face each of them shows towards these large self-stakers so casually. Any one of those outnumber us entirely. By numbers, more importantly, with me now here at Bjork's house. A shame. Standing right where we were fighting, where I feel at once to get along with each other now as quickly as I can in some pleasant greeting where my relationship to her will be coming in terms of belonging and talking, chatting even, my latest caddy too, instead of being dragged from foot to foot wreck, wanting to stand help for anything through or now around with them towards every minute a destination, always later. I wait to ask this next person for what feels now, at some moment, such as this, always out of my sight, to be somewhere out of my.
Okay, let's wrap this up. We've stayed too long here.
When I find that being, or knowing the direction of him, that I would say now. Here we go. I was convinced that all I must do here at Bjork's hometown is how I used to say this is just pretend I wasn't already caught out there under and then pushed out and really do for once take things about Bjork just as they are in all of their heartache, fugues, moods, fears, insecurities, habits of food intake, drool, crap, sick, love for past friends and now modern fasts, mommy, delightful, unassailable. People do, because here where we live with each other isn't really where we really live. Score the homily. Leave your notes on the back. I must pause before this discussion. Walk around the town some time first, tired, so I can wake up feeling certain parts of it will get back their hue of existence the moment I take back an eye on them myself again. That must be our goal right here. My memories will always remain trapped as they were last time I saw them. Don't allow us any art here that pretends this moment will work that way. Do not give us in our lost moments a sort of boredom which always just arrives every time the observer would believe his invention will do some viewing, must expect his mind and mouth to want a passing verdict on everything, except in such a hurry that our progress all falls between. When no time there.
Done.